to reach the ultimate purpose of our being, oneness and companionship with our Creator and with one another. The two great commandments. For Casey, the outer struggle is important, but the inner work is the key to understanding the message in this mysterious manuscript. The symbols, he says, represent self. Self's body physical, self's body mental, self's body spiritual. And they are one in you, even as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit is one in him. Why then was it written in such a cryptic manner? According to Casey, it was to keep its spiritual secrets for those that were or will be or may become, through their spiritual seeking, initiated into an understanding of the glories that may be theirs if they will put into work, into activity, the guidance and calling found in the text of the vision. So if you're listening to this right now, that means that your higher self or whatever has brought you to this point. And maybe there's something from this text, because I'll tell you a story about at the end of this, about what happened to me after I read the book of Revelation in this manner. So as the Spirit comes to each church and speaks to them, so Casey wants of us to ask ourselves, what is lacking in self? Are you cold? Are you hot? Have you been negligent of the knowledge that is yours? Are you stiff-necked? Are you adulterous in thought, in act, in the very glories that are yours? In every line of the Revelation, every activity, every symbol, we find good and evil engaged in a struggle. This struggle, according to Casey, is within our hearts and minds, and is because we were created to be heirs, joint heirs with the Messiah Christ, Logos, as sons and daughters of God, to that everlasting glory that may be ours. But the material, physical forces and self-satisfying interests take strong hold of us, and we forget our spiritual destiny. Yet Casey does not see the physical as evil or a stumbling block to spiritualization, rather as a tool, a stepping stone to aid in our spiritual struggle. If we use it properly, as the Revelation reveals, even the ancient Yoga Sutras convey this truth. The human body is not only an excellent vehicle for all physical life and three-dimensional consciousness, it is an excellent device for experiencing metaphysical life and spiritual consciousness. Here are some examples of Casey's interpretation of symbols, scenes, and characters found in the Revelation. The 7 churches. These represent the 7 spiritual centers within the body. In classic Hinduism and Buddhism, these centers are called chakras, which mean wheels, spinning wheels of energy, located in specific areas of the human body. Casey correlates these centers to the endocrine glands, which secretes the powerful hormone messages directly into our bloodstream, affecting all parts of our body. Each of these churches represent a specific spiritual center. The virtue and the fault of each church symbolize the virtue and fault of that spiritual center within us. These powerful centers affect the soul and mind, calling on it to overcome its weaknesses and do what it knows to do so that the final glory may be achieved. The initial process involving the spiritual centers within our bodies is intended to help prepare us for the spiritualization of our minds and hearts described in the subsequent chapters of Revelation. It's really interesting when you read the Law of One. Ra is explaining that we have these different rays of energy, the 7 rays, and we go from the red ray to the orange ray, to the yellow ray, to the green ray, to the blue ray, and moving up through these rays is how civilizations advanced and the energy that becomes available to us when we go into the indigo ray. It's consistent with what's being said here and clearly is a part of any species growth spiritually on any planet, and is obviously a part of what happens in the universe. So Casey says the 7 lamps of fire, which is referred to in it, these represent the helpful influences that destroy hindrances to the spiritual awakening. They are inner messengers, aids who stand between the forces of good and evil and become powers within our human nature to overcome and allow our divine nature to more fully be expressed. This idea may be an extension of the teaching that angels watch over us. An example of this can be found in Psalm 91:11, "For he will give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways." It may also be the power of our inner conscience that helps us along the way. But with Casey, it may also be our inner thoughts and chemistry, what thoughts and hormones we are releasing most often, those that fire up the carnal or earthly forces of the body, or the gentler, calmer, more uplifting ones that make our body a temple for our soul. The four beasts, these are the four fundamental physical natures, desires of our earthly human nature that must be subdued. They are also the four destructive influences that make for the greater desire for the carnal forces. The Revelation's description of each adds to our understanding of these forces and how we may control or at least reduce their negative qualities. These also represent urges and focus forces in the four lower, more earthly endocrine glands in our body. Casey equates the four lower glands with earthly forces and three upper glands with heavenly forces. Now that's interesting because when you go to one of Dr. Joe Dispenza's lectures, when he talks about the energy centers, he talks about the three upper glands. Now, as Casey refers to the heavenly forces, as when you're in a wave-like state, that the energies of the lower chakras are particle-like. So when you start activating those upper energy centers, they are wave-like with heavenly forces, as Casey describes. The great red dragon. Now this symbolizes the powerful urge within ourselves that originally so separated us from the source of life that we would fight with those very influences that would bring about the spiritual awakening we seek. The great red dragon is the serpent from the garden in Genesis, who first aided in our soul's separation, according to Casey, from God's presence, and the garden symbolic of a serpent like willfulness and reasoning within ourselves when we were heavenly teenagers with the keys to the car. Now this influence has grown strong and powerful in the form of a great red dragon, ready to devour any new heaven-centered intentions we bring forth in our hearts and minds. Mark of the beast. Now, this strange mark, the 666, represents vows and obligations we have made to the work of the beast, and how we condemn rather than help any effort to overcome the beast's influence. Now, the beast in the book of Revelations, according to Casey, is like our selfish ego and egocentric interests. It represents the work of self alone with our Creator's influence. The mark is erased when the work of our hands and thoughts of our minds are cooperating with God rather than simply being self-driven. The beast is our lower nature at our most selfish, self-centered, self-gratifying, self-glorifying point of existence, according to Casey. Now, the new heaven and new earth, these represent, according to Casey, a new heart and mind and a new body. Throughout the Old Testament, we may have noticed the Lord makes occasional references to giving us new hearts or circumcising our hearts. Deuteronomy 10:16, Ezekiel 18:31, Jeremiah 4:4. Now here in the final book of the Bible, we have received our new hearts. These also represent a new vibration in the seven spiritual centers. The wheels are spinning with a new purpose, a new life force, one that is spiritualizing. Therefore, we have a new body too, one that helps the heart and mind maintain higher consciousness. Now, I have episodes about the heart and mind. It's discussed in Reality Transurfing, how coordinating the heart and mind is the key to coordinating outer intention, or what you might refer to as God, or the outside forces of the world. And we get a new heart and mind. We enter into this once we align our spirits as defined by Casey. The water of life, which is referred to, this is the transformative, rejuvenative influence of the Spirit of God flowing through our purposes, which have been made pure in the blood of the Lamb, which is in Jesus Christ, to those who seek to know his ways. Ingesting this water is cleansing, making us new and reborn. But once again, it is not actual water that we are talking about. According to Casey, it is the essence of water from within us, as Jesus meant when he said that he that believes on me, the me here is spirit abiding within the man Jesus, as the scripture has said, from within him her shall flow rivers of living water. John 7:38. Now, Jesus' reference to a passage in scripture is to Isaiah, where we find a similar comment about the inner water. And the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your soul in dry places and make strong your bones, and you shall be a watered garden like a spring of water whose waters fail not. Check out my waterfall meditation. So the tree of life, this represents the sturdiness of the purpose of the individual and its sureness in the Christ, according to Casey. The tree's leaves represent our activities that are as healing to others and ourselves in the material life. The fruits of this special tree are the fruits of the Spirit. Casey listed them in many of his discourses as kindness, patience, joy, understanding, gentleness, long-suffering, forgiveness, etc. Edgar Casey's interpretation calls for each of us to participate in a great struggle to be born again in the Spirit and spiritualize our lives, bodies, and mind. In chapter 1, verse 10 of the Revelation, the disciple John tells us that he was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. Casey says that he was in deep meditation. In this deep state, he was caught up in the Spirit of God and turned, Revelations 1:12, away from the outer world. He began viewing the inner heavenly world and was told to write what he saw and heard. Casey says that what John perceived was for his own spiritual development, as well as for other souls who, by their own development, could sense the true meaning of this story and its strange imagery and use it to benefit their own journey. Again, the journey we are speaking of is the journey from being a predominantly physical, material being to a predominantly spiritual, celestial being, sojourning temporarily in the physical world, according to Casey. The process John went through to have his revelatory experience combined with the content of the experience reveals a spiritual, mystical approach to life. So, there's so many more things that we could talk about, but I just thought you guys might find that super interesting. Now, let's get a little more specific stuff that I found, because when you read it, I want to know what the churches are. So the church of Ephesus is the first center, and that's the gonads. According to Casey, this portion of our spiritual selves that holds the 7 stars, identified as the 7 angelic forces overseeing each chakra, and walks among the 7 golden lampstands, identified as the actual glands in the body, says that his first center's virtue is that it has toiled and persevered and cannot stand evil or false spirituality. Nevertheless, its weakness is that it has left its first love and must therefore remember from where it has fallen, repent, and do the first deeds. Despite all appearances to the contrary, we are celestial spiritual beings first. We descended from heaven into matter and this world. These outer influences have taken hold on us and they possess us. In many of the ancient texts, reversing the flow of energy in the body is a major technique for spiritualizing the body. We see it in Taoist diagrams and with the Great Spirit breath. And in the final comment to this center, the Spirit promises if this center spiritualizes itself, then it will be allowed to eat from the tree of life in the paradise of God. In other words, it will regain its immortality and its companionship with God in the paradise first lost in Genesis. The church of Smyrna, the second center, or the cells of Leydig, as the spiritual self turns its attention to the church of Smyrna, it identifies itself as being the first self and the last self, which was dead and is now alive again. It acknowledges that the center, the navel or lower abdomen chakra, has suffered much tribulation, poverty, and slander from those who say they are true spiritual seekers, but are of the synagogue of Satan. Casey identifies this second spiritual center and the sixth as the seat of the soul. The soul's companion is the subconscious mind, according to Casey. These two abide in the autonomic nervous system of the body and directly affect the endocrine glands and their hormones, and their primary points of contact are the second and sixth chakras. The spirit is aware of the soul's and subconscious mind's poverty and tribulation in a purely physical driven body with little to no spiritual nourishment. When we are predominantly in our outer egos and conscious minds, our souls and deeper minds suffer and starve. Despite this, the Spirit says that the soul is rich and it should not fear its trials and imprisonment in the body, because at the death of the body, the Spirit will give it the crown of life. Now, the church of Pergamos is the third center. That's the adrenal glands. As the Spirit approaches this center, it describes itself as one of the two-edged sword, revealing the center's power to wield a weapon that can cut for good or evil. The Spirit acknowledges that this center may held fast to my name and did not deny my witness, my faithful one, even though this center is where Satan's throne is. So this center is the place of anger, impulsive reactions. That we're talking about the solar plexus. The Spirit identifies its weaknesses and vices as eating things. So Casey says that my name, in verse 13, refers to our eternal name that uniquely identifies each of us from among the rest of creation. Somehow deep within each of us, the Spirit says that we have not fully denied that this aspect of ourselves. We have not killed the witness to our spiritual nature. So then there's the church of Thyatira, which is the thymus gland, and now this one is the fourth center that's described. It's the where this now that the spirit moves to the fourth center, identifying itself as the Son of God with eyes like fire and feet like fine brass. This would be close enough to the heart chakra, but it's defined as the thymus gland. In other words, it has the vision of the spirit and the understanding that only comes from being tested in the furnace of life. It acknowledges the heart chakra as charity, faith, patience, service, and works. The most recent works being greater than the first works, but also has one major issue with its center. It lives with life without love and spirit, only seeking gratification and pleasure. This is represented by the false prophet Jezebel, whose motto is to get all you want no matter how you obtain it, and by acts of fornication, which is sex without vows, here representative living physically without spiritual ideals. It's not making a comment about sexuality, it's making a symbolic statement. The Church of Sardis is the fifth center, that's the thyroid gland. Speech delivered by the Spirit identifies this center with the throat. And I remember reading this, and there's examples of terrible things happen when the throat chakra is open when I started to read this. Notice how much this center is identified with will and speech. Casey says that one of the major steps to full spiritual consciousness is letting our will become subordinate to God's will. He often recommended an affirmation such as this one from the Search for God study group readings. It was recorded in capital letters. Your will, O God, be done in me, through me, as you see, for the desire of my heart is that I may be the channel of blessings to others in the ways and manners you see, not my way, O Lord, but your way.
Amen.
This is reminiscent of Jesus' intimate prayer sessions with the Father in the Garden of Gethsemane, in which he prays three separate times for the Father to remove the cup of crucifixion from him, but only if it is the Father's will, not just his will. There's the Church of Philadelphia, which is the sixth center, and that's the pineal gland. The spiritual self approaches the sixth center, located deep within the brain. It references that part of itself that is holy, true, has the key of David, opens and no one can shut, shuts and no one can open, which is to say that only the spiritual part of our being can allow the spiritual process to proceed. This is considered to be one of the most holy centers in the human body. It is the place of the Mount of God. According to Casey, if we enliven this center with the spirit and spiritual intentions, then we draw all the lower centers up to this high place and unite them with God's Spirit. Now, if you've ever had a chance to do one of Dr. Joe's meditations with the breathing technique, and he pulls the energy up from the centers to the pineal gland, then you'll know what this is. If you've had your third eye opened, I have episodes on opening the pineal gland, so check that out. It truly is a spiritual and powerful, mind-blowing experience, is the best way that I can describe it. Now, this is the only center that the Spirit finds no fault with. There's nothing this center has to do except continue to hold on to its truth. Therefore, the Spirit promises to draw all the cells of the body before it and make them bow to its truth. It also promises to keep this center from the temptation that it has coming to the rest of the body. In Patanjali's arrangement, the crown chakra is the highest center in the body. The Kundalini, having risen up the spine, moves through the brain to the brow, culminating at the opening of the crown. In Revelation 3:11, the Spirit actually mentions the crown in reference to this center. In Casey's arrangement, the energy flows up the spine, through the brain, to the pineal gland, opening this crown chakra, but then flowing to the forehead, which to Casey is the highest center, that being the pituitary gland. If we fully awaken this center, then the spiritual self promises to make us a pillar in the temple of my God. Now, the Church of Laodicea is the pituitary gland. Now, in this particular case, the spiritual self arrives at the highest center in the body. The aspect of the spiritual self that is in the center is the Amen, the faithful and the true witness, the beginning of the creation of God, according to Casey. So then you go through and read the book of Revelation, and there's some other things like the throne, the 24 elders, the 7 spirits, the lake of glass, and the 4 beasts. So Casey describes all of that, the 7 seals. The 24 elders, I believe now that the Spirit has addressed and awakened all 7 centers within the body to the spiritualization process. It takes the body to a new level of vibration. Now a throne is in the midst of heaven, and the higher spiritual self is seated upon this throne around the higher self. And the throne are the 24 elders, which Casey identifies as the 12 paired cranial nerves within the brain. Energy is being emitted from the brain, flashes of lightning and sound and pearls of thunder, and the 7 chakras and glands are turned toward the throne, which is 7 lamps of fire burning. The 7 spirits of God in the midst of the throne. Before the throne are the 4 beasts we saw in Ezekiel's vision, then in Daniel's vision, and now here again in John's. We find these same beasts represented in ancient Egyptian mysticism as the 4 children of Horus. Horus was the Messiah of the ancient Egyptians, rescuing the world from his uncle Set's domination. According to Casey, these beasts are the 4 destructive influences that make the greater desire for the carnal forces that arise as the beasts within self to destroy. We learn the destructive influences from Casey's comments to the first 4 churches, leaving out our first love. 2, fear. 3, anger, impulsive reactions, and spirit-killing urges. And 4, living life without spiritual purposes and ideals. All of these destructive influences are personified in Cain. Though he first sought God's love, he later did not desire it. He killed his brother impulsively. As the revelation continues, the 4 lower grounds are raised to higher vibrations, turning away from the material earthly pursuits and contributing to the spiritualization of the body. The 4 beasts gave glory and honor and thanks to him who sit on the throne. When they do this, it affects the cranial nerves. The 24 elders will fall down before him who sits on the throne, and they in turn begin to contribute to spiritualization, cast their crowns to him who sits on the throne. And then the spiritual self is able to open the seals on each of the spiritual chakras. The book with the 7 seals is the body. The only part of us that is truly worthy to do this is the part that is crucified, self-centered desire, self-sufficiently to allow God's will to fully enter, according to Casey. Then there's the 7 seals and the soundings. And those are very interesting. It's what happens when the chakras are opening, the cleansing and uniting of the 7 centers. And there's the opening the first seal, sounding the first trumpet, opening the second seal, sounding the trumpet, the red horse, war, the black horse, famine. And each of these is parts of things that happen when the seals are opened, and they all symbolize other things. So there's the rod, the temple, the 2 witnesses, and the 7th angel. So I could go on and talk about this stuff forever. But the kingdom is within you is the prime thing that I get from this. And so when I went and read this, and again, because I've read the book of Revelation, I've read the Bible once, and I've listened to the Bible a couple times, one time super fast in one sitting. And that's a good way to access the Bible. But I've read, of course, Revelations more than other books because it's a fascinating book, and maybe it will tell us about our future. There's certainly religions that strongly believe that it has something to do with what's going to happen in Israel and the end of the world. I have an ex-girlfriend who will say she knows that right now it's the end of the world. I had something happen in our family, and somebody had passed away, and somebody said, well, I know that God's preparing for the end right now. They're preparing good people for the new apocalypse to come. And I've talked to people that have very strong beliefs about the end times happening right now. Of course, they would have thought the same thing when we find out that in Nazi Germany, there's a Holocaust and millions of people are being killed. There have been times in our past that are much worse than what's happening now. But people have this belief that there's the end of the world because of the book of Revelations. But forget about that. Because right now we're going through a reality revolution, much like it's talked about in this book. And as Casey says, it responds to you. I just read a beautiful speech about the living word by Neville Goddard, and he talks about this point where you come to a realization that the Bible is a living biography, a living word of you, and you become alive in that gospel. And this is the weirdest thing, but after I had gotten this interpretation, I've read these novels, felt like I had read these in the order that I read them for a reason, so that I had come to this point. And then I read the book of Revelation. Now, if I get enough requests in the comments, I will read the book of Revelation. I cannot believe I would actually do that, but for the podcast, why not? As a reading. We can listen to it with some music in the background. But when I read it, I felt like the whole universe was unveiled to me. I walked up to my bathroom and I started brushing my teeth, and the music I'd been listening to, I just got done narrating the William Blake poem, Marriage Between Heaven and Hell. And so I was in that mood, and I had these incredible visions in my mind, and I went upstairs, and I felt my third eye just pop. And I was not in the bathroom brushing my teeth. I was the entire universe at one. I could sense infinity in every tiny little grain all around me. The feeling of aliveness in everything that was around me. I could not go to sleep. And this is my normal time on the weekend. Could not go to sleep. I just laid there with visions of the universe and this joy and bliss flowing through me after I had read this, because I had seen all the things I had gone through. Now that I understood, I don't know if it's true or not, but when I had read this, it felt like it was speaking to me, and the hurdles that I had gone through, and the different parts of my past, and the thing I overcome. And so when I read it, it was very powerful to me. So what I can say to you is, check this out. If you want me, we can go even further into it. But I did find the part where Edgar Casey talks about opening the first seal and the sounding of the first trumpet, for instance. The higher self and the spirit of the Lamb, and in coordination with God's will, opens the seals of the body. When the first seal is opened, out comes the first of the four horsemen riding a white horse, wearing a crown and carrying a bow. His mission is to conquer the negative influences and win the center for the spiritual self. Right? There's even a discussion of planets in the book of Revelation. The human body is arranged in a manner that reflects the arrangement of the universe, according to Casey. His best explanation is that as we find Mercury, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, Venus, with Mars in an abstract position, all becoming a part of this entity's experience, not because of bodily birth, but because of the entity as a soul. For the entity finds itself, body, mind, and soul, and recognizes or may become aware of the manifestations of the Godhead in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, according to Casey. Then there's the second seal, the red horse war, when the sound of the second trumpet. When the second seal is opened, out comes a horseman wielding a great sword, riding a red horse. His mission is to take a piece away from the earth and make men slay one another. The spirit cannot allow us to be terrestrial, earthly beings forever. We must be forced to seek the spirit, even if it means war. The outer things that are related to the center are the color, and it even talks about the color orange. The color is orange, and the colors are used in here as corresponding to those centers. And so each of the opening of the centers, it describes the process that comes. And so I suggest and challenge you to look at it. And opening the sixth seal, the earthquake, the wrath of the Lamb, and that is when everything has been cleared, and it's once the heaven releases the four angels who've been prepared at this point in time. It's pretty interesting. In any case, I could go on and on talking about this, but I wanted to mention it for this episode and this interpretation. And is there any experts out there? What you think about that particular chapter of the Bible? In any case, I believe that we are on a path, and the chakras and energy centers are both symbolic part of our growth as human beings. We go through this growth and are also a part of something higher that's happening on a conscious level. As we move up to these higher levels of energy, these are all energies that we have to have control of. And we're moving to a point where we're controlling these energies. As we move and blossom into a higher density being, these energies are part of that. That's all we are. We are infinite spirits existing inside of these little bodies that we are aware of, only these little energies. And so there's a process in becoming aware and accessing these other energies that are around us. It's pretty amazing to think about. But in any case, I'd love to get your opinion about the Book of Revelations as a description of the awakening. And I'd love to get any impressions that you might have. But in any case, all episodes of The Reality Revolution can be found at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.
It's been nearly 30 years since Gary Zukov wrote The Seat of the Soul. Now that book is always by my nightstand. It is the book that profoundly changed the course of my life. I can give the teachings, the mastery of that book credit for changing the trajectory of my entire life. The Seat of the Soul changed the language of what I was able to express. I mean, my heart, my energy felt a certain way, but I didn't have the voice or the language to express multisensory perception. And Gary, was able to articulate in a voice that resonated with me. I was ready for it. So anybody who's read it and feels like, I don't get it, means you're just not ready for it. And I continue to be ready for it. As I say, it's on my nightstand. And every time I read it, I get something new. Gary is the very reason, actually, that we are all together here today. Because I would never have dreamed of this day had I not read that book. I would have never had it in my consciousness. It's because of Gary that I also changed the course of my show, where I changed the intention of the show. And I would believe it was because of my intention that the Oprah show became what it became in the world. Truly a force and a voice for good, for elevating consciousness, and for inspiration.
Oprah, you're not rich enough, huh?
Hello everyone, welcome to Diane's Tarot. It is Monday, July 20th. It is lovely to have all of you here. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who donated to my channel. I have decided to demonetize my channel because, it was lowering the vibrations and it was really in opposition to what I believe in with these ads. And so the ET that I work with said, you need to get rid of these ads. And so and a lot of you asked, I saw in the comments, how do you know that the being that you're channeling on the astral plane is good or not? This is how you know. He said to me, you need to just stop with these ads. It's not helping your channel at all. And I said, yes, but I don't live on the astral plane. I'm here in the real world, and you're asking me to give up revenue. And he said, don't worry, you're going to live in abundance. Okay, so you know what? If you're in that position, put these beings to the test. And this is something that you guys can kind of look at, and you can back check some of what I'm about to say. 333. I got 3 times the amount because so many of you. So, that's kind of just a good note to, think about as we're going through these tumultuous times. So let's take a look at Bill Barr. So he gave this big 45-minute speech on the 16th, last week. And we've just gotten the news about, the Russians hacking our computer labs, the labs, the research labs in the medical centers. And not just with us, but with the UK and with Canada. Our own national security agency said, yeah, it is Russia doing this. And what did he talk about in that 45-minute speech? China. The whole thing was about China. China this and China that. Okay, China may have its faults, I'm not saying that, but why is there no outrage from this administration that Russia is hacking our medical labs? There's still no outrage from this
Because
administration
we
about
gave
Russia
them the
bringing on
information
our
to hack the
soldiers.
lab. Are you kidding
And,
me?
I think China is the shiny thing over here that he wants you to look at, because he doesn't want you looking at Russia. That will lead you down a rabbit hole that he doesn't want you to go down. So I think it's, pretty obvious. He couldn't have made it more obvious if he tried. And I'm sure, too, this isn't making our allies very happy. Okay, so let's take a look here. Card that represents him, King of Cups. You see all this water down here? Water is always about emotion. And so I know on the outside he doesn't seem, and this has come up with other readings with Barr. On the outside he seems one way, but in the inside there is some turmoil. He knows what he's in for. He's not a foolish man. I mean, just because he's not nice doesn't mean that he doesn't have any intuition and he doesn't understand what he's doing. His obstacle, living in a fantasy world. This is about being ungrounded and trying to make decisions. And look at the decisions. I mean, you have a ghost in one cup, a fairy, baubles. I mean, none of these things are real. And so he's sort of living in his own imaginary world. His conscious thoughts, money changing hands. He's trying to wheel and deal. No surprise there. Subconscious thoughts, more money. He wants money. He wants to make sure, and this has to do with family money. He wants to make sure that the Barr family is good to go for the next few centuries, I think, with the kind of money he's, oh geez. Okay, so in the past, we get our Russian friend back. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And so not just is this, a little Russian man, he's also stealing and trying to get away with it. He's looking over his shoulder. And so yes, in the past, we know that Barr had some shady dealings with Russia, and now he's trying to get away with it. Okay, the energy he's coming into in the next few months, judgment. Which makes me think, because I keep hearing Barr will be disbarred. That's what I keep getting from Spirit. And so here he gets the judgment card. That's the energy he's moving into. That makes me think he has a legal battle ahead of him. How he sees himself, so pompous. He sees himself as the magician, the one that can manifest his desires into reality. I think those days are ending though. They're ending because he's coming into this. How others see him. Look at this card on the surface. You have a man talking to a fish in a cup. And when you couple that with this card, living in a fantasy world, and here he is talking to a fish in a cup, I think that just kind of shows you exactly what kind of mindset he has. His hopes and fears. He wants to wheel and deal his way out of this. He knows something's coming. He wants to wheel and deal. This is him, trying to work with others to make a deal. His outcome, interesting. He's getting money. He's getting money. Let me do some clarifiers on that one. So let's see what happens with this money. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so this is the Queen of Swords. Here she is holding the Sword of Truth. So his finances, I'm thinking, are going to be affected. And then here he is, the Hermit, all alone. Not a good card to have. And then followed by the card of grief, sorrow, and loss. So I think, I'm almost wondering if this came up because, we have so many cards with him wheeling and dealing, if he's going to try to buy his way out of this. But, I mean, look at his outcome. Here's his outcome, right there. So, I think he's going to stick to his old tricks, but it's not going to work out for him. All right, so let's take a look at Trump in August. still feeling like his energy's waning, still seeing him in a wheelchair. And I don't know if that's metaphorical or literal. Because in the back of his mind, I know he's always been thinking about playing up his illness. He does have something going on, but either playing it up or just downright faking something. Because he wants out, but he can't just walk away. If he walks away, then the Southern District of New York's got to step it up, and everyone else. I'm sure there's going to be things that we don't even know about yet that's going to come up. Like I said before, there's going to be a point in a year or so that we're going to be so sick of seeing all these trials. It's just going to be one after the other, and it's crimes against humanity. Like I did that other video on, where are those 1,470 migrant children? Where are they? How do you lose that many children? I think the answer is obvious, that they're not lost. Okay. All right, so the card that covers him. Interesting that I'm seeing him in a wheelchair, and he's getting Archangel Raphael, the angel of healing. I'm wondering if we're going to be hearing more about his illness coming up. The question is going to be, is it going to be legitimate information, or is it going to be more contrived? His obstacle, Queen of Cups. This is my card for the virus. So, what Spirit's saying to me is he's handled this so poorly. I mean, look at how he's doing in the polls. We've never had a sitting president to be behind by double digits in the polls. And so it's because he handled this so poorly. Now, if he had tapped more into this energy, he may have stood a chance, but it's too late now. And he's not showing any signs of caring. His conscious thoughts, money, financial offers, gaining money, getting good news about money. He wants money, which we all can see, right? I mean, that's not new. Subconscious thoughts. King of Cups, this is also my Dr. Fauci card. But whether you want to look at it as being Dr. Fauci or just being, this is interesting. You got the Queen and the King of Cups, and they're both highly emotional. You see all this water. Water is emotion. So he is feeling pretty emotional, and he knows that Dr. Fauci and all the other experts are right. In the past, this is the card about enlightenment. And some of the things that he did came to light. You can't hide things in the sunlight. This is the opposite of the moon card. Things came to light. We started to learn things. The way he sees himself, because I'm not doing the short-term outcome because I'm just looking at the month of August. The way he sees himself, he's sort of living in like this ungrounded sort of way. This is like a card of celebration and happiness. He's not getting it. This is almost a little bit delusional for him to see himself that way. How others see him. I do not take this as a literal physical death, but politically, yes. His hopes and fears. This is the star card. It reminds me of, the 13 colonies, the original flag, and this is one of my cards for the U.S. because of that. He wants to, in some ways, he does want to win the election. In other ways, he wants to bail and run, but, he still has some hope. This tells me he still has some hope. Okay, interesting. So in August, here he is mulling things over, assessing things. And once again, we're going back to finances. And so I'm wondering if in August, if some of that information about his taxes is coming out. Let's do a couple of clarifiers about that. He certainly didn't get any cards of, being happy and celebrating and that sort of energy. So let's do a couple of clarifiers for his outcome for August. okay, at a crossroads, trying to make a decision, trying to figure things out. So he really isn't firm in his decision still. That's what this tells me. And then we get the little Russian man again, trying to get away with it, looking over his shoulder. Not a surprise. And then here's the sword of truth coming out again. Interesting how we're seeing some similarities between the readings. So, I think what this implies is that we're going to be finding some things out in August, and they're not going to be favorable towards him. But he is very consumed with money, isn't he? He's very consumed with money. All right, let's take a peek at what the Starseed Oracle has to say to us today. So we'll first look at what message our soul has for us, and then what message the universe has, and then we'll connect the two. And these cards are so big. I know I said that last time too. These cards are huge. And let me just open up the box here. Okay, I'm just going to set the cards down because they're too big to hold into the box at the same time. And all of you hated when I pulled the camera down because it wasn't a good angle, so we'll just do it this way. Okay, so what your soul wants you to know is that you're not for everyone. Embrace your weirdness, face your true north. And that's a good point. Not everyone has to like you, and as you're going through this awakening, you're going to find that people that you once clicked with, you're not going to click with anymore, or they may not click with you because your vibrations are going up and theirs isn't. And so don't try to be a people pleaser where you're trying to win everybody over. It's okay to just be you. What your soul wants you to know is that you're a child of the cosmos. The intelligence of the universe lies within you. So, you have a starseed family. You're not just from this planet. There's more to you than your physical body. The intelligence of the universe lies within you. Okay, to bridge it together, a new earth. It's happening. Keep holding the vision. Yes, we are coming into this wonderful new time where we're coming into a new earth. We're going into that fourth density of love and understanding. And so there we go. There's our little bit of sacred geometry to start our week. So thank you everyone for watching, and thank you so much for everyone that donated. I am still just blown away by that. Thank you so much for your generosity. I truly appreciate it. And I will be collaborating with Milu later this week. So look for that video, and I will see you all in a few days. Bye, everyone.
The fact is, whether he knows it yet or not, he will be leaving. Just because he might not want to move out of the White House doesn't mean we won't have an inauguration ceremony to inaugurate the duly elected president of the United States. And I'm second in line to the presidency, and just last week I had my regular continuation of government briefing. This is my history because I say to them, this is never going to happen, God willing, it never will. But there is a process. It has nothing to do with it that certain occupant of the White House doesn't feel like moving. It has to be fumigated out of there because the presidency is the presidency. It's not geography or location. So much for him. I wouldn't spend so much time on it. That's a victory for him because then we're not talking about your first more important subject, which is what are we going to do to stop this vicious virus that is making an assault on our health, again, our lives, our livelihood, and life of our democracy. In the HEROES Act, we have $3.6 billion forwarded by mail. This is very, very important. It's what is needed in our country, and it has bipartisan support throughout the country. Secretaries of State and other auspices for under which elections take place are calling for the resources. They don't want any barriers to it. We have some additions we like, which is a registered voter gets to vote by mail with return postage paid, that those who don't want to can go and vote in a safe way with a lot of time leading up and a lot of locations so that people are not crowded into it. This is simple. It's, when I say simple, we know what we need to do. Again, ignore what the president has to say. He doesn't know what he's talking about, the wants of him, when he talks about any problems with vote by mail. I was state party chair more than 30 years ago before I was a member of Congress. And we would win on, Joe knows this, well, it was before his time too, but we would win on election day and the Republicans would come raging in with the absentee ballots. So they know how to do this and they've done it for a long time. But this is no longer just a democracy issue. This is a health issue. And if they can't face that reality, then all the more reason for us to get that money so that we can make it happen in a healthy way for our country. The way our soldiers go, our overseas voters.
Madam Speaker, it's so funny you say that because this whole debate about absentee votes